for those of you who haven't tried MRI before, it's an experience. You need to remove all metal. You know, MRIs, they produce magnetic fields, so they will suck up any metal in the near room. You're basically pushed into a narrow hole in the middle of the machine on an even narrower bed. And there you're going to stay, listen to the sounds of this machine, which bangs, and if you're claustrophobic, it's not easy. And then if you need to be completely still as well. And with the pain you might have, as I did, it's not easy. So I went there, and obviously I checked beforehand, what is this MRI thing? What will happen to me? How does it look? And so on. So I went into this machine with this in my mind. You see here that it's completely sucked in here. And then starting to think, did I really remove everything? I mean, did I have a pacemaker implanted before, which I don't know? And, you know, all of these things start to happen in my mind. Did I feel safe moving into this one? I have to say I was quite anxious. And I see the nurses and the doctors could see that in my eyes, because it's not pleasant. So how can we contribute to a patient feel safe and that they get an effective treatment or diagnosis? How do we develop safe and effective medical devices with collaborative design and simulation? Let's break that down for a bit. I will guide you through the Department of Engineering, the R&D basically. So we'll go through steps like requirements, engineering, risks. We will talk about testing the device as well. And we will move over to design. We'll have a look at simulation, how does that connect? And then move into technical documentation and the change of which is constantly happening. I think Anneli or Rehan mentioned the only thing that is constant is change. So we will look at these different topics in that order, just to have an understanding of the digital thread throughout that, and connecting back to what Mike told us before. So when you do research, you develop or you manufacture any device or medicine, you all produce tons of data. It's all about the data that you produce. That is where you have the value. Why not take care of it in a good way and use it as efficient as possible? All this data describes the product, the processes in which the product needs to go, and the procedures you use in order to manufacture it, create it, or even operate it later in the hospitals. And every product that you put on market, whether it is a medical device or a drug, needs to be proven in terms of safety, efficacy, efficiency, and those kind of things. And you also need to prove that you have taken all measures thinkable to do just that. And for that reason, it's much easier if the data that you're looking at and working with is traceable. What we can see here, everyone I am sure are familiar with the V model. So on the left-hand side, you go from user needs, maybe some standard requirements or some regulatory requirements on the high level. Then you break that down into product requirements, system requirements, component requirements. On the right-hand side, that's where you actually test that you fulfill these requirements, right? And that's nothing new. The good thing here is that a couple of things actually. One thing is at the bottom here, we also relate the physical product, the thing that we actually realize, the CAD model that we realize based on the requirements. And everything is data driven, and they are all interlinked. And you can, just by looking at that screen, see that there are some red lines, there are some green bubbles, there are things. It's visual to you. You will be able to see quickly, okay, there is something I need to put some attention to. Probably the requirements are not fully covered yet. Maybe not all test cases have been run. Maybe there are some test cases missing, and so on. So all of that information in just one glance. But it's not enough to keep it on this level, to only have the documents or specification traceability. You want also to be able to see the details, because like we always say, the devil is in the details. So if we take another step into it, we open the hood and look into the documents itself, we can see that if we define and work data-driven, we will actually be able to see a specific requirement and how that is traced through from user needs to product requirements to test cases to components of the design, all in one page. And you can then easily understand that, which I will come into later, if there is a change, what would be impacted here. It's very easy to find out. I mean, in many cases when we meet companies, like Rihan mentioned, they create PDF documents and they store it. Now they are digital. Yes, but they are not data-driven. And we need to work smarter with the data that we create and produce. So if you have the user needs, there are requirements in the user needs that needs to be broken down into product requirements. So there is a link, a reference between these. And if you have two different documents, how do you link it? Many companies, they do it by hyperlinking. That's good, because then you have somehow a link. What happens when that document is moved, which you're hyperlinking to? Well, you lose the traceability. And all those requirements probably can be reused in another product. So if you then look at how do I reuse that information in a good way, then again, there is another document. And probably I copy and paste that information. To avoid copy-paste, quality problems, issues in reusing, we suggest a data-driven approach where we actually have each object, each data object, in this case it's a requirement here, reusable across products, across specifications. So when we have all of this in place, a designer can start work, because now he knows what to do. There are some requirements for him. You need to select the material, you need to find out performance requirements, requirements on length, size, and colors, and all of that. And the good thing is, if you remember, at the bottom of the V, there is the physical product. So every requirement that he needs for his design is actually linked. So he has his specification right in front of him. No need to work with papers on the side. And then, now you see a little bit how the collaboration improves, because there is someone dealing with the requirements, someone else dealing with the tests, someone third dealing with the design. But all of this comes together, and there are clear handovers, and clear handovers from and deliverables from these processes into the next. And each of these handover data objects also indicate state and maturity, so that I know whenever I look at something what status it has, whether it is for me to use or not. The designer starts to build his model, in this case a CAD model, computer-aided design model, in a dedicated system. He puts information such as geometry, different performance parameters, material, size, all of that, those kind of information is all related to the design. And it is data-driven now. We can use this information for different purposes. And on this screen, which I personally feel is very good, because I'm a guy who needs visualization. I don't understand things when it's not visualized. I need that as a complement. And in this case, you actually have it right in front of you, next to the text, to the bill of material of that model. You can turn it around, look at it, see. This makes data more transparent. People in the organization will understand what is it that we are actually doing, working with. How does it behave even? We will have a look at that later. And so anyone can view. People who need to be involved to review this can do it here easily. They can annotate directly and send back in a digital way, data-driven way, any issues that they found. And people can also use it to approve it, so that finally the design is ready. Now the design that we talk about here is robust enough to take to the next step. And what is then the next step? As part of the entire product development process, why not introduce and have simulation as part of it? Because now we can really do some cool stuff. I don't want to spoil too much, because we have a keynote speaker later who will really dig into this topic. But what I want to tell is that with an integrated simulation capability in your product development, you will be able to much earlier find issues with your design, so that you can early on optimize as much as possible when it comes to the performance, the quality, the safety of the device. I have a video. It's 1 minute long, and there are two roles inside. It's the designer and the analyst. We have the designer over here and the analyst over here. There is no sound. I will just play it, but there will be some text pop-ups, so you can read and follow what are they doing. This is an example of how do you collaborate efficiently within a data-driven and digitalized platform. And I will be quiet during. try again. So. See how easy it can be to just optimize a design and merge that new optimized pieces into the bill of material on one platform. But this wouldn't be possible unless it is possible, but it is much more easier if you have a data-driven approach and all the data that comes before you are at this step is already available to the persons working with it. And I'm sure you will be blown away by Tim later on this topic, so I will stop here and move to the next one, because now we have looked at the requirements and the test management. What I forgot, sorry, we need also to provide, really think through what we're doing and look for all the risks associated with the product. All of that is also traced in the first picture we saw with the V, right? So we have trace from risk, how do I mitigate that with a requirement, how do I test that with a test case, what am I testing, the product. And part of the testing and verification is obviously the simulation. That is a result that you can apply to it. When all of that is done, we have now optimized the design as much as we can. We summarize gradually this information into what is called engineering bill of material, an EBOM. In the engineering bill of material, already mentioned a little bit by Maike, we have her insulin medicine here, with all the chemistry stuff she talked about. How does that go into here? And it's all inside the product that will go to the patient at the end. Together with packaging, how do we pack it? How do we label it? Together with what we already saw, the actual pen, the bill of material. All in one screen. Then obviously you can dig deeper into each of these and find the related information that has been produced up until now. And engineering, they are responsible to further enhance this engineering bill of material, because we need information perhaps from any supplier parts. So if we buy parts to make our product, we need to also define that. And what are they made up of? So we are looking for safety data sheets, for instance, we can connect here as well. Because if we have all of that data, we can also run, which is very important, simple analysis on the product's material compliance. We can add 2D drawings to this to further visualize and maybe communicate with external parties or internal if needed. or maybe to authorities if we want to take this product to market. Obviously, engineering, we need to have information such as what is the quantity, because this bill of material is one delivery, one important delivery from the R&D to the rest of the downstream processes. When I say downstream processes, for instance, manufacturing, we want to integrate them as well into the development, because the earlier they know what is coming, the earlier they can plan how do we manufacture it in the best way. Sourcing, obviously, we need to buy some stuff here to actually create it. Sales, probably what is coming soon after we get market approval. What do we sell? How does it look? And a very important stakeholder mentioning that market approval is regulatory, of course, because they need a lot of information to do their filing to authorities. But that is up to, I will hand over this digital thread to someone else who will talk about that. So, keywords, domain information, jointed here. We have transparency, we can see what is our product, what does it consist of, how is it made up. Process integration, there are many different competences and domains involved in this. Apart from the bill of material, there is also technical documentation that need to be delivered, created. And when I say technical documentation, what's that? You see one example here, stability report, for instance. We have the IFU, instruction for use. We have intended use. We have product specifications. Documentation which is needed in addition to this engineering bill of material, because those are all documents that provide information on how to either handle the product itself or provide information that tells how safe it is or how efficient it is or that it's in a good quality. But in many cases, I think Rehan had this up already before in the beginning, to create all of these documents, there are some challenges. Because a lot of the information, inside of these documents are actually used in many places. For instance, the intended use or contraindications. Those are used in the IFU typically, in the product specification as well. And if you, again, work document driven, you most likely will copy, paste this information all over the place. But then when there is a change, how do I make sure I correct it everywhere? Just if it's a small spelling thing, or how do you express something, you need to make sure that it's all consistent. So if you're working in a digital and data-driven way, why not build up, in this case they are called topics, but text boxes, text information. And these text boxes can then be reused across. This means that you can have a consistent data across all the different documents where those text boxes are used. You have change control because they are all owned by someone. So if you need information from regulatory, you pick that information into your document. If you need information from engineering, you pick that information into your document. They are responsible for the source. So whenever they do an update to it, you will get an indication and ask, okay, do I want to update my document as well? This way, we'll reduce all the copy pasting, all the revisioning, all the work that is around managing change on these kind of documents. And obviously, when we talk about authorities, I think maybe Sandra will come into that later. And Anneli mentioned it already before, that we need to be ahead of kind of time. Authorities are not always ahead of time. They require documents sent in different formats. So you can generate documents out of this and reports so that you can send this information to those who need it. But the important part here is that you maintain the data where it belongs, but use it where it is needed. I talked about okay, what is this? It didn't move, or? Aha, that's a report up here. I mentioned change many times, and that is a huge area for any company. Most of the companies we meet who already have products on the market, they spend, what do we say, 70–80% of their time in post-market activities, which is change. Change is part of that. And I mentioned a lot of benefits of having a data-driven approach. You change the things where they are maintained. And but on top of that, there are people who need to be involved. The right people need to be involved at the right time to do their work. So here we work with digitalizing the processes that they have inside the company. We make standardized processes as part of the change process so that we involve whoever needs to be the reviewer, whoever needs to be the approver, whether we need to involve head of engineering, head of quality, regulatory, so that we easily can capture and repeat the same steps in a good way. And again, on top of this, if you have a data-driven approach and the information defined like we talked about up until now, you can also imagine that if there is a change on a component of the design or a requirement, maybe an ISO standard changes, you go and do your change assessment. We work with companies that actually, certain organizations, they have 2 or 3 people hired full time to just do change assessments on the products that they are working with. Because it's so hard to find the information. And they don't really work data-driven. And in this case, like what you saw early on with the V model, and then with the design, with the engineering bill of material, the technical documentation, you can imagine then that you go, you do a change assessment, it's one click, go to that requirement you knew were going to change, the ISO standard for instance. You go to that requirement, you do a change assessment, you click on the button. What happens? Well, everywhere where this requirement is used shows up instantly. And you can easily do change assessment. If I do a change to this requirement, what will happen to this, the requirements that you have broken it down to, the product requirements, what test cases we might need to revisit, what parts might be affected, and so on. All of that will be visible to you on the screen for analysis. And I met with this company in, I think it was Austria, talking about change. This guy from the R&D department came in and he carried this black big suitcase. And then on the table, on the desk in the front, he just slammed it. Bam! He got everyone's attention. And he opened it up and he said, "This is our change process." And we were, "Okay, what do you mean now?" Yeah, and then he started to pull up papers from it. We print everything related to the change. And we put it in this briefcase, and then we carry it from room to room in this building. If something is done on another facility close by, they need to either travel or the bag need to travel there. And we were, "Oh my God, this is yes, we have right solution for you. Make it digital, make it smooth." And the big problem for them, the main driver, there were several, was that they are not able to see if a change is ongoing on a product and they want to do another change. They don't know, because that briefcase is somewhere. Not everyone has it like that, but it's a very visual story to see that with everything in one place, or at least reachable from one place, and digital, it becomes available to every room in that building, but also the building next door on the screen. And you don't need to spoil paper. You want to be sustainable as well, right? So, and more importantly, you will be able to plan your work in a much better way, because you will be able to see, okay, there is an upcoming change on my product. Now I can either go with that, or I can plan the next release, maybe. So, what do I feel safer now? Given the knowledge I have shared today, and that I feel that there are tools available for companies to really become data-driven. And as Ria mentioned before, we think that this is a way for the companies to be more efficient, have better control of their data, use the data. A lot of data just lays there, is not used. And with this, have better chance of avoiding and correcting errors.